Okay, so we said we'd talk about this last time.
Okay.
All right. So how long should Christians be sad about a dead person that they loved?
Why are you using the adjective Christian?
What do you mean?
Like, in other words, does it differ between a Christian and a non-Christian?
I don't know.
How people should grieve?
I don't know.
Okay.
Are you talking about the alive people or the dead people? Because I was going to bring that up actually too.
The alive people. Like, in other words, so if I've had someone that's just passed away.
Yeah.
And therefore, are you saying there's maybe a difference between the way the Christian would grieve versus the non-Christian?
Well, we talked about that, but like how long?
How long?
That's why I'm asking.
Okay.
But to add to last time.
Okay.
If a Christian was, if a non-Christian died that a Christian person loved, I understand crying for that.
Okay.
Because they're not having a good time.
Right.
So,
sure.
But like if a Christian person dies,
okay,
and a Christian person who's alive loved the Christian person, that Christian person that died is having a great time.
Sure, absolutely.
So don't get why you're crying there.
Okay.
But if they went to hell, you could cry.
Right.
Because that sucks.
Right.
Right?
Okay. Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Okay, so that's why I said if Christians die, like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that makes sense. Okay. So for, for individuals that pass away, so let's say they're a Christian. We know they've gone to be with the Lord.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm a Christian. Know they've gone to be with the Lord.
Yes.
It would be perfectly normal. Like, I guess it depends on the relationship with the individual. Okay. So like if it's a spouse, okay, or it's a child, or it's a, of mine, or it's a parent of mine. I think all those will play into a little bit of a difference.
Okay.
Because let's say I'm a Christian and my elderly parents have passed away to go be with the Lord. Like, I'm still going to grieve and cry and miss them. Okay. And I'm crying not because of where they are. I know they're with Jesus. I'm crying because I will not hear their voice again on this earth. I'm crying because I can't pick up the phone and go talk to them. I'm crying because I won't be able to go, in like, for example, in my case, drive to the farm and sit down and talk with them. Right. Like, so like there's a sense of deep, like, missing someone. Like,
okay.
And, and we're told as Christians that, we do not grieve as the world grieves, because the world has no hope.
Right.
And so we grieve, but we grieve with hope. Right. So in other words, I'm grieving the loss of a parent. I'm grieving the loss of not being able to talk to them, for them not being able to see certain events in my kids' lives, wishing they were there for that.
So how long should that last?
Like you can have like real deep grief, whether it's for a spouse, a child, a parent, a sibling, for 3 to 5 years. Like I'm not saying like
that. What?
Yeah. Like, I'm not saying like paralyzed grief. Okay.
Okay.
But what I'm saying, like, but like grief in the sense of, hey, their name is brought up, they cry. A story is told about them, they cry. Something reminds you of that person, you cry. Like, that's 3 to 5 years is considered in the kind of in the psychological counseling world like a normal length of grief.
For everyone?
No, it can differ. All I'm saying, that's like up to.
Okay.
So some people may grieve that way for 6 months and then not so much anymore. Or I think what's probably most common is like the first time of something that happens. So for example, you've got a loved one that passed away. The first time they're not at Christmas. The first time they're not with you at Thanksgiving.
Oh.
Their first time, like if it was a spouse, that first anniversary that they're not there with you. Their birthday like all those firsts that come up for that first year can be really difficult for people. And I know people that really have a hard time with grief for really like, 2 to 3 years. If they've been with someone, especially they've been, married to someone for a long time, or maybe if it was just a sudden loss, and goodness, to lose a child, that's a whole different can of worms, right? Because now we've lost a child. Even if we know that child, if they were old enough and when they knew the Lord, or it was before the age of accountability and we know they're with the Lord anyway. But so that's what I'm saying. I think when we talk about it as Christians, like, yeah, we have hope we're going to see them again. Like, that's the joy. That's the hope. That's the reason I'm not into a full-blown depression over this, right?
Okay.
That's the reason I can.
So the difference between Christians and non-Christians and grief is full-blown depression and
no, I'm not saying that.
Kind of sad at Christmas.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying we grieve like the world grieves, but there is an assurance, but we're going to see them again. Like, therefore, in other words, like I'm not just trapped, lost, thinking, oh my gosh, the grief is so acute that it's lasted now beyond 3 to 5 years, and I've still not gotten over it. But I'll say even Christians fall into that trap. I've seen it happen before, where you encounter someone that's just incredibly bitter and incredibly angry, and can be angry at God because they feel like God took their child from them. And so I just think there's a lot of variables in this. There's not like a right or a wrong. I just know that from a counseling perspective, once I get past 3 to 5 years and there's still like really acute grief, really acute anger, that we are really in an unhealthy space for that person.
Okay.
Yeah, their soul is in an unhealthy space. So
what do I not get?
I don't know. You tell me. What do you think?
I don't get it.
What are you not getting? The grief part?
I don't get it.
So
I am married.
Sure.
If my wife died, she would immediately go to the best place ever.
Correct.
So why would I be crying for very long?
Because
why would I cry about her being in the best place ever? If I was crying, it'd be for me. Correct. Because I can't.
Yeah.
She won't be here.
Correct.
But that shouldn't last very long, right?
I think it really differs from person to person.
This is what I don't understand.
Yeah. It really differs from person to person.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So for some people, yeah, they'll be able to move on quicker than others. I just want to sit here and tell you that there's a right way or wrong way or right length of time to grieve.
Okay.
But you also understand what I'm saying about the distinctions between, I think there's a big difference between an elderly parent passing away or grandparent passing away versus and even an elderly spouse passing away, right? Versus a child that we deem, I don't know if it would even matter how old we were if we would lose a child,
Right.
And I think that those kind of things are heartbreaking.
I just feel like I'd be thinking about she doesn't have to go to work anymore, which sucks, which is the majority of our day.
Right.
She doesn't have to put up with me anymore, which sucks half the time, I think. And she's in the best place ever,
right?
Getting to watch me fumble around and do whatever I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So all right, for me, and I can only speak for me.
Okay.
I can only speak for me. So when I have a parent that passes away, and if they're not able to make it to my kids' graduations, they're not able to make it to my kids' weddings, right? That's a loss. Okay. And I'm not saying it has to be this intense amount of grief, depending on the timing of when these things happen.
Mm-hmm.
All I'm just saying is that when we grieve, yes, we have hope. We know we're going to see them again. But yeah, we're going to miss them at the things that we would have preferred for them to be at. You know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's perfectly normal. I think that's part of the human existence. I mean, even when Mary approaches Jesus and says, Jesus, you could have saved my brother,
mm-hmm.
but you didn't. And Mary just cries. Like, where were you? And Mary just cries. Well, what does Jesus do? He weeps, right? Shortest verse in the Bible, Jesus weeps.
Mm-hmm.
And so he cries with her. And so even Jesus, the Son of God, who knows he's about to raise Lazarus from the dead, knows her brother will not even remain dead, cries with her.
Okay.
So grieving, crying, is one of the most natural human emotions that we find all throughout Scripture, and we find even with the Son of God himself. And where he's weeping there, and he's weeping with Mary, he's weeping with the one who's grieving and crying. Like, I think that's just Jesus getting down on our level with us. And he knows that he's about to raise this man from the dead, and he's still crying. And I think that's kind of the point. It's like, I know I'm going to see my family members again if they know Jesus,
mm-hmm.
right? I know that. But I'm also going to cry, and I'm also going to grieve. And again, different people will do this in different ways for different lengths of time. And some of them will be sad, some of them will be mad, some of them will be a combination of both. It'll be across the spectrum. And I just think that's all part of, again, just the human experience and the human existence as we're walking this earth in our brokenness. Christ walks with us. And so, yeah, I've got hope, but I still grieve. And I think it's perfectly fine to be in that place.
I feel like I'm missing something.
And I get it. I do understand, especially if someone's been suffering and they're not suffering anymore. Man, we're thrilled about that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just saying, like, there's, for some people, that we're going to grieve, you know, the loss of a loved one because they're not there, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's
I guess it's just hard for me to, like, in my brain, not see how the positives outweigh the negatives.
Yeah, but we have emotional responses all the time that have nothing to do with the factual logic of things.
Right. Okay.
And so all I'm saying is I think there's emotional responses like grief, like crying over the loss of a loved one, that has nothing to do with the logical fact of they're in a better place, mm-hmm. which is factually true, or the logical reality that we're going to see them again, which is factually true. But it's just our own emotion. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Jesus validates that when he cries with Mary.